The room fell into an unfocused blur until a flash of green near the terrace doors caught Graham's attention, making him blink furiously to bring everything into focus. When he finally got the terrace doors to settle into their crisp lines of window panes and heavy drapery, no one was there. At least no one wearing the shade of green he knew he'd seen a moment earlier. The doors were closed, keeping the revellers sheltered from the unseasonably cold night. So where had the person come from? Had she gone outside? Was she coming back in?
"What is your opinion of her, Wharton?"
Graham pulled his gaze from the windowed doors lining the far wall and glanced at Sherrington's raised eyebrows. With a tilt of his head, Graham tried to appear deep in thought. And he was, only he was trying to come up with a statement that wouldn't reveal he'd been ignoring the other two men, not considering the merits of any particular girl.
Her family is good enough,"
he finally said. That should apply to every girl in the room.
"She isn't likely to cause you much grief."
Unfortunately, there weren't many girls that second sentence didn't apply to either. Most of the gently bred women had been raised to smile and simper and act like nothing was ever wrong. It was part of what made them remarkably interchangeable. Which was probably why Graham was no closer to marriage at 31 than he had been at 21. He didn't want to lose track of his wife in the melee because he couldn't distinguish her from someone else. Mattingly nodded in agreement with Graham's vague statement.
"She might even be willing to live in the country while you stay in the city."
Sherrington scoffed.
"Can't afford that nonsense."
He frowned.
"Think she'll expect such a thing, Wharton?"
How should he know? His parents enjoyed eating breakfast together every morning and talking in their private parlour into the night. He wasn't exactly the person to ask about distant marriages. Still, he didn't want his companions to know that he couldn't hold up his end of the conversation, even if they'd given him a bucket to put it in.
"Many matrons find a quiet life within the city, so she'll have no problem being more settled and less sociable."
Unless, of course, the woman was a harridan or bluestocking. But by the time Sherrington discovered that, he'd have bigger problems than Graham's poor advice. Of course, the chances of Sherrington considering such a woman were non-existent. He wasn't looking for distinct and memorable. Unlike Graham, who had apparently imagined a splash of bright green in the shape of a dress because he was that desperate to meet someone who didn't bore him. A woman he could even begin to consider making a life with. Sherrington and Mattingly continued their discussion, debating whether or not the girl's father would be amenable to Sherrington's suit. Graham made sure to pay a token of attention to the conversation so as not to be caught off guard again. Most of his attention was on the women dancing by, though. One wore a blue dress, the colour distinct enough to stand out in a crowd. It wasn't as bold as a bright green, but it was at least unusual. The girl was probably less inane than the rest of them.
"I'd best move into position if I want to ask her for the next set of dances."
Sherrington straightened his coat and nodded to his companions.
"To the gallows, gentlemen."
Graham grinned.
"Rather confident, isn't he?"
Mattingly laughed and wished his friend luck.
"Charville's girl won't be enough for me, I'm afraid."
Mattingly adjusted his coat.
"Only the biggest catch of the season will do for me."
Mattingly's difficulties weren't as bad as he made them seem, so Graham left him to his self-sacrificing monologue. The girl in green was more intriguing, even if she were only in his imagination. He turned his attention to the more deeply coloured gowns of the matrons and spinsters. Still, no vibrant spring green. When Mattingly stopped talking, Graham continued the conversation, more out of habit than actual curiosity.
"Who have you settled on, then?"
Whatever name Mattingly responded with didn't matter, because there, barely visible through the limbs of a cluster of potted trees along the far wall, was a patch of green. How had she gotten all the way over there without him seeing her?
"Yes,"
Mattingly continued.
"I think Lady Thalia will be delighted."